Hello and welcome. We're reviewing the Bankers Top 1000 2018, and now we're looking at Africa. I'm here with James King. He's the Africa editor. So James, has it been a good year in Africa for banks?
Well, it's been a much stronger year for African banks in this year's ranking after a couple of years of really tougher times due to that crashing commodity prices. We've seen across the board big positive gains from South African banks, from Nigerian banks, and even Angolan banks, which have had a really difficult time of it. So it's a much more positive picture this year.
And what's happening? I mean, a lot of African countries they've done a lot of reform, but are they continuing to reform their economies and make things better conditions for business?
That's right. So a lot of markets are now putting in the hard yards to try and sort of reorient the outlook for their sort of economic structure. Egypt is no exception to that. We've seen some big changes in the country in terms of the free float of the pound and so on, and that's sort of feeding through into the performance of Egyptian banks.
Okay, so tell us about Egyptian banks then.
So it was a really strong year. So we saw a massive jump from Commercial International Bank, which is the country's largest private lender. That flew up the table to 13th spot from 20th in last year's ranking. It has about 1.5 billion in Tier 1 capital now, and also strong gains from National Bank of Egypt and Arab African International Bank.
Okay. Now, the biggest market on the continent is still South Africa, I think. I mean, I know there's been a bit of a vying for place with Nigeria, but what's been happening in South Africa? Because we've seen Barclays in particular pull back from South Africa.
That's right. So South Africa had a more difficult year in 2017, but this year 6 of the highest movers for the region come from South Africa. So that really goes to show that some positive gains are being made in the markets. We've also seen the arrival of Absa Group in this year's ranking, and as you said, that links back to the withdrawal of Barclays from South Africa.
So instead of being part of Barclays now, it's an independent group. Exactly.
So Barclays withdrew its position in Barclays Africa Group from about 60% down to about 15%. The new entity sort of rebranded itself as Absa Group, and that now is number 3 on our regional ranking.
All right. And doesn't Absa have ambitions to be continent-wide as well as South Africa?
That's right. So over the long term, it aims to capture about 12% of Africa's total banking revenues. So they're very ambitious, and they're really sort of looking to expand, perhaps into new markets over the longer term. So it's going to be an interesting bank to watch in terms of our rankings.
James, that's great. Thank you very much.